On a quiet night, a child lies on a grassy hill, staring up at the glowing moon above. It feels so close, so peaceful, like it's watching over the world. Thousands of years ago, ancient people gathered around crackling fires, looking skyward in awe. The moon was more than a light. It was a mystery. In ancient Greece, philosophers pondered what the moon truly was. Peering through primitive lenses, they debated its form, its meaning, its place in the cosmos. By the Middle Ages, monks and stargazers sat hunched over parchment, sketching its shifting shape by candlelight, seeking patterns in the sky. During the Renaissance, the invention of telescopes brought the moon closer. Scientists like Galileo saw shadows and craters, proof it was a world, not a divine orb. Yet even as science grew, myths remained. People imagined gods in chariots riding across its surface, and celestial beings dancing in its glow. In sleepy villages, the moon cast gentle light over rooftops and fields. People stood still in the dark, watching it rise, just as their ancestors had. Poets sat by windows, writing by moonlight. Painters captured its glow on canvas. The moon stirred something eternal in every soul it touched. In bedrooms filled with space posters and books, children pressed their faces to the glass, imagining what it would be like to visit that faraway place. Above the clouds, the moon still hung, quiet, untouched, timeless. It remained a symbol of mystery, of possibility, of dreams just out of reach. Telescopes turned upward, observatories scanned its surface. Humanity was no longer content to just wonder. We were preparing to understand. And like a tree growing toward the light, our curiosity stretched upward. We didn't just want to know the moon, we wanted to go there. For much of human history, the moon remained a distant dream, a glowing mystery beyond reach. But as the 20th century dawned, the world was on the brink of transformation. The quiet dream of reaching the moon became entangled with the loud and complicated politics of the era. The Cold War, a tense, decades-long rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, reshaped the world. It was a silent battle for power, influence, and ideology, stretching from Earth to the stars. Within this competition, space emerged as the ultimate frontier. In 1957, the Soviet Union stunned the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. A small metallic sphere transmitting faint radio signals, Sputnik circled the globe, an undeniable proof that humans could reach beyond their planet. The world listened, and a mixture of awe and alarm spread across nations. The United States, surprised and motivated, quickly responded. NASA was created, and with it came a new era of scientific discovery and ambition. Project Mercury marked America's first steps towards sending humans into space. Astronauts like Alan Shepard and John Glenn became symbols of bravery and the possibility of exploration. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union continued to push boundaries. Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit Earth, his orbit marking a milestone that inspired pride and urgency. Both nations accelerated their efforts, fueling technological breakthroughs and stirring public imagination. The space race was about more than rockets and satellites. It was a contest of wills, a test of human ingenuity and determination. Each new achievement, from spacewalks to orbital rendezvous, brought the dream of landing on the moon closer to reality. The Gemini program, with its complex missions and daring maneuvers, tested astronauts and technology alike. It was a bridge between Earth's orbit and the moon's distant surface, a rehearsal for the grand leap. Behind the scenes, countless scientists, engineers, and support staff worked tirelessly. They faced setbacks, dangers, and moments of uncertainty. Yet their resolve never wavered. Together, they shared a vision, a vision of a peaceful step into the vast unknown. By the mid-1960s, the Apollo program was born, a promise from America to the world, to land a man on the moon and return him safely by the end of the decade. It was a bold goal, filled with risks and challenges, but also hope and excitement. The moon was no longer just a dream or a prize in a geopolitical game. It was a symbol of what humanity could achieve through unity, curiosity, and calm determination. To reach the moon, engineers designed the Saturn V rocket, a towering machine, the most powerful ever built. This colossal rocket would carry astronauts beyond Earth's atmosphere and into the vast expanse of space. It was a marvel of human engineering, assembled with precision and care. Alongside the rocket, the lunar module, a small, delicate spacecraft, was crafted to land on the moon's surface. Unlike the command module that orbited above, the lunar module would face the unknown up close. Rocky terrain, low gravity, and a silent, airless environment. The astronauts chosen for this mission embodied courage and calm. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins trained relentlessly. They practiced weightlessness by floating in giant water tanks, rehearsed every step of the mission with meticulous detail, and prepared for emergencies that might arise in the unforgiving void. Their training was not just physical, but mental. They needed to remain composed in isolation and under pressure, trusting their equipment and each other. It was a delicate dance of human skill and machine precision. Meanwhile, teams of scientists and technicians worked behind the scenes, solving one problem after another. From life support systems to navigation, from communications to safety protocols, every detail was checked and rechecked. Despite their preparation, the risks were very real. Space travel was still new and dangerous. The astronauts knew that any mistake could be fatal. Yet, they embraced the challenge with quiet resolve. As launch day approached, the world's attention turned to Kennedy Space Center. Families gathered, children watched with wide eyes, and millions held their breath in anticipation. The calm before the storm, a final moment of peace before the giant leap. July 16th, 1969, Cape Kennedy. The Saturn V rocket stood poised, a marvel of engineering, taller than the Statue of Liberty, filled with fuel and possibility. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered nearby. Some brought binoculars, others telescopes. All watched and waited. Inside, 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, went through their checklists. Calm, precise, methodical. The world held its breath. At 9:32 a.m., ignition. A roar, flames, smoke. The rocket rose slowly, powerfully, carving a path through the Florida sky. Inside Mission Control, engineers monitored data, checking every system. Around the globe, television screens flickered with grainy footage and scratchy radio voices. Humanity had left Earth once again, this time bound for the moon. After the thunder of launch and the initial push from the Saturn V rocket, Apollo 11 has left Earth's grasp. The spacecraft, having separated from the spent third stage of the Saturn V, is coasting smoothly in the silent void. For the next 3 days, it will traverse the 240,000-mile gulf between Earth and Moon, a lonely voyage through deep space. Inside the command module Columbia, the crew settles into a routine, checking equipment and conducting navigation sightings against the backdrop of stars. They are calm and focused, yet one can sense the immense significance of their voyage. Humanity's first journey to another world, weighing quietly on their minds. From Columbia's windows, the view is both beautiful and humbling. With each passing hour, the Earth grows smaller behind them, transforming from a vast blue globe at launch into a bright blue marble hanging in the blackness. Swirls of white cloud and blue ocean cover the distant planet. Armstrong even notes a spiral weather system over the Gulf of Mexico near Texas, confirming Houston's stormy weather report. Ahead of Apollo 11, the moon is still just a pale grey disk, slowly growing in size. The inky void around them is cold and silent. To manage the extreme temperatures of sunlight and shade, the crew places the spacecraft in a slow, rotating spin, a maneuver dryly nicknamed the barbecue roll, so that the sun's heat is evenly distributed. This passive thermal control keeps the ship from getting too hot on one side and too cold on the other as it glides through space. In these quiet hours, the astronauts perform housekeeping tasks, tend to navigation, and occasionally peer out at the receding Earth and the approaching moon. Despite the vast distance, the crew remains connected to home. On the second day, Apollo 11 crosses the halfway point to the moon, about 200,000 kilometers out, and enters the moon's gravitational influence. In a brief televised transmission, they show off the cramped interior of their command module and offer viewers on Earth a glimpse of their world, a tiny capsule surrounded by the infinite darkness. They turn a camera toward the distant Earth, showing the glowing blue sphere suspended against black space. It is a calm, slow-paced broadcast. The astronauts speak softly and describe what they see, sharing this unprecedented journey with a world of spectators back home. As the crew settles into the rhythm of space travel, they also run through crucial procedures. Small thruster firings are made to adjust Apollo 11's course, mid-course corrections ensuring they will arrive on target near the moon. The astronauts periodically check on the lunar module Eagle, still attached below the command module, to ensure its systems are in order for the upcoming landing attempt. Meals are taken in the form of packed rations, simple, squeezable foods and bite-sized snacks, eaten while weightless. Sleep in these conditions is fitful but achievable, as the men strap themselves into sleeping bags to prevent floating about the cabin. Through it all, Mission Control in Houston maintains a constant watch, communicating updates and reassurance. The radio link crackles with friendly voices, bridging the 250,000 miles between Earth and Apollo 11. Every few hours, the Capcom checks in. Apollo 11, this is Houston, and one of the astronauts replies with a calm update from deep space. On July 19th, 1969, after 3 days of quiet cruising, Apollo 11 finally nears its destination. The moon, once a remote light in the sky, now looms large through the windows, a foreboding sphere of light and shadow. The crew readies the spacecraft for the critical maneuver ahead, firing the service module engine to slow down and enter lunar orbit. They brace themselves for the next chapter of their journey, as the relative tranquility of coasting through the void gives way to the delicate dance of orbital mechanics around the moon. The vast emptiness behind them is about to give rise to a new world in front of them. Apollo 11 is nearly at the moon's doorstep, poised for arrival at humanity's long-dreamed-of destination. It is late afternoon on July 19th, 1969, when Apollo 11 reaches the moon. As the spacecraft swings behind the moon's far side, that mysterious hemisphere never visible from Earth, contact with Mission Control is temporarily lost. In those moments of radio silence, the crew witnesses a sight only a handful of humans have seen: the far side of the moon, a rugged, cratered landscape bathed in stark sunlight, utterly alien and untouched. At 1721 UTC, out of view from Earth, Apollo 11's service module engine ignites for the lunar orbit insertion burn. The steady burn lasts roughly 6 minutes, slowing the spacecraft just enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. When Apollo 11 emerges from behind the moon on the next orbit, Mission Control hears Armstrong's voice again, confirming they are in orbit around the moon. There is relief and quiet triumph on both sides of the radio. Apollo 11 has successfully become a lunar orbiter, one step closer to the historic landing. Now circling about 100 kilometers above the lunar surface, the crew can peer down at the moon below as they loop around it every 2 hours. In total, Apollo 11 will make 30 orbits around the moon before heading home. Each orbit takes the astronauts over the stark grey plains and towering crater rims of the lunar landscape. They spot the broad, dark lava plains known as Maria, including Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility, where they intend to land. During one low pass, they glimpse their planned landing site in the southern Sea of Tranquility, near a small crater named Sabine D. From orbit, the site appears as a relatively flat, grey expanse, chosen because it was thought to be smooth and safe for touchdown. Still, even from altitude, they can see that the moon's surface is pockmarked with craters and strewn with boulders. The realization dawns that actually finding a flat, obstacle-free spot to land might be a challenge. As they sweep across the front side, the astronauts catch sight of a glorious Earthrise, the blue planet cresting above the lunar horizon. For a moment, Earth and Moon share the sky in the crew's view, the home they left behind and the alien world below. On July 20th, Armstrong and Aldrin clamber into the lunar module Eagle to prepare for their descent to the surface. The two-module spacecraft has been docked together since launch, but now it's time to separate. In the cramped confines of Eagle, Armstrong, the mission commander, and Aldrin, the lunar module pilot, don their helmets and backpacks, power up the lander's systems, and double-check the controls. Michael Collins, the command module pilot, remains alone in the command module Columbia, which will continue to orbit the moon. At 13:46 UTC, just before the descent is scheduled to start, Apollo 11 passes once more behind the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin, riding an Eagle, radio to Houston that they are go for descent. Shortly thereafter, at 17:44 UTC, Eagle undocks from Columbia. Springs gently push the lander away from the command module. Watching from Columbia, Collins sees the spindly-legged lunar module drift into the sunlight. Eagle unfurls its 4 landing legs, which had been folded during launch. "The Eagle has wings," Armstrong exclaims over the radio as he observes the deployment. For the first time, a spacecraft designed to carry humans to the moon's surface is flying free on its own. Collins, now truly alone orbiting the moon, takes a moment to inspect Eagle as it performs a slow pirouette maneuver in front of him. He confirms that the lander's legs are fully extended and there's no visible damage, giving Armstrong and Aldrin a final go for the landing attempt. In Columbia's cabin, Collins experiences solitude like few others have known. At times, when he passes behind the moon, he is completely out of contact with Earth and his crewmates. Yet, as he later reflected, he did not feel lonely. Instead, he felt very much a part of the mission, aware that his role was crucial to its success. During those 48-minute stretches on the far side of the moon, Collins feels a sense of calm focus. He carries on with housekeeping tasks in the command module, dumping excess water, tracking spacecraft systems, and keeps an eye on his orbit, ready to respond if anything goes wrong for the landing crew. As Eagle's orbit lines up for the descent trajectory, Mission Control gives the final OK. Everything is set for powered descent initiation, the engine firing that will send Eagle down to the moon. Inside Eagle, Armstrong and Aldrin are strapped in, face down, and heads toward the moon, as per the lander's design. Through small triangular windows, they gaze out at the moon's surface, which is now eerily close. The stage is set. In the silence of lunar orbit, Eagle's engine ignites, and the descent to the Sea of Tranquility begins. At 102 hours and 45 minutes into the mission, 4:05 p.m. EDT on July 20th, Eagle's descent engine roars to life, beginning the powered descent. Armstrong and Aldrin feel the gentle kick of acceleration as they start dropping toward the lunar surface. In mission control, dozens of controllers hold their breath. This is the most perilous phase of the mission so far. Eagle is oriented belly down, engine firing to slow its orbital velocity and drop altitude. As the lander arcs toward its landing site, Armstrong and Aldrin call out numbers, altitude, speed, fuel, in a steady rhythm. At first, all appears nominal, but soon they realize Eagle is arriving long. They are flying ahead of schedule, meaning the automated guidance computer will overshoot the targeted landing zone. The likely culprit is lunar gravity itself. Concentrations of higher mass, called mascons, slightly tugged on the spacecraft's trajectory, or perhaps residual pressure in the docking hatch pushed Eagle off course. Whatever the cause, the effect is clear. Eagle will land several miles west of the intended spot, approaching terrain that is less familiar. Halfway through the 12-minute descent, at about 6,000 feet above the moon, Eagle's onboard computer triggers an unexpected alarm. "Program alarm," Armstrong calls out in surprise. "It's a 12:02, he reports, reading the code from the display. Neither astronaut is immediately sure what that code means. In the tense seconds that follow, the alarm sounds again and again. Inside mission control, back on Earth, guidance and computer specialists scramble to decipher the 12:01 and 12:02 program alarms flashing in Eagle's cabin. The mission hangs in the balance. These alarms indicate the lander's computer is overloaded, unable to complete all tasks in real time. Should they abort the landing? Guidance officer Steve Bales and backroom engineer Jack Garman quickly recognize the issue. The computer is struggling with surplus radar data, but crucially, it is still working and can land the spacecraft. "We're go on that alarm," mission control radios to Eagle, telling Armstrong and Aldrin to continue the descent. The computer, as engineers later explain, is shedding low-priority tasks and focusing on essential guidance calculations. In effect, the little onboard computer is doing exactly what it was designed to do: prioritize landing over anything else. With relief, Armstrong and Aldrin hear Houston's voice. They are go to proceed. Focusing back outside, Armstrong now faces another challenge. As Eagle pitches forward and flies lower, he glimpses the landscape ahead, and what he sees is alarming. The computer's landing target, displayed in his window, lies at the edge of a large crater and is littered with car-sized boulders. If Eagle descends there, the lander could topple or be damaged. Armstrong, a seasoned test pilot, quickly grasps the danger and takes semi-automatic control of the spacecraft. With a calm announcement, he tells Aldrin and Houston that he's switching to manual control to find a safer spot. By toggling controls on his stick, he overrides the automatic descent guidance. The lander's computer will still hold attitude steady, but now Armstrong can direct Eagle horizontally. He gently pitches the craft and flies it like a helicopter, skimming over the treacherous field of boulders in search of a clear area. Almost immediately, they realize fuel is running low, slower than expected progress, and the maneuvers have eaten into their reserves. Mission Control calls out 60 seconds, then 30 seconds of fuel remaining. In Eagle's tiny cabin, a bead of sweat forms on Armstrong's brow. The moon dust stirred by the engine begins to obscure the surface, making it hard to judge motion. Armstrong scans forward, looking for shadows and rocks through the dust cloud. Aldrin continues a steady stream of altitude and velocity readings. 100 feet, 5 forward, guiding Armstrong's intuition. In these final moments of descent, every heartbeat is amplified. Armstrong's heart rate, normally in the 60s, soars to 156 beats per minute as he concentrates on the landing. Through his pilot's instincts, he spots a flat patch of ground just beyond a small crater and delicately coaxes Eagle toward it. The lander responds sluggishly in the moon's weak gravity, bobbing slightly as it descends. Dust billows in a thin haze. At 2017-40 UTC on July 20th, a contact sensor dangling from Eagle's footpad brushes the lunar surface, triggering a light on the control panel. Contact light, Aldrin calls. A split second later, the lunar module's wide footpads settle onto the moon. "Okay, engine stop," Aldrin says. As Armstrong shuts down the descent engine for the first time, humans have landed on the moon. Inside Eagle, there's a brief moment of stunned silence. Then Armstrong radios Houston with the historic words, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." There is a pause, then celebration. In mission control, Charles Duke, the Capcom, responds with palpable relief. "Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You've got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot." Applause and cheers erupt in the control room. But on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin remain all business. They have landed in a place no person has been before, a place they name Tranquility Base, in honor of the peaceful Sea of Tranquility. Yet they must immediately secure their vehicle. The moon's gravity is only 1/6 of Earth's, but still the lander could tip or sink if the ground is unstable. Quickly, the two men run through the post-landing checklist. Engine off, control mode to auto, communications antenna positioned. Everything looks good. Eagle is upright and stable. Gazing out the window, Armstrong sees a desolate grey landscape in the long shadows of lunar early morning. "It looks pretty rocky out there," he remarks to Aldrin, "but they are safe on the ground." Back on Earth, an estimated billion people rejoice at the news. The dream of humanity setting foot on the moon is now just moments away from coming true. On the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin take a moment to absorb their situation. Through Eagle's small windows, they can see a monotone surface of grey dust and rocks stretching out in all directions. The sun is low on the horizon, casting long, sharp shadows. Aldrin radios to Earth. "Houston, this is the LM pilot. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask every person listening, whoever and wherever they may be, to pause for a moment and contemplate the events of the past few hours, and to give thanks in his or her own way." In the tranquility of that lunar afternoon, Aldrin privately gives thanks by taking communion, a fact he keeps mostly to himself due to its personal and religious nature. The mission timeline originally called for the astronauts to take a 4-hour rest before their moonwalk, but unsurprisingly, neither man feels much like sleeping. After conferring with mission control, they decide to proceed directly into preparations for the EVA, extravehicular activity. There is too much excitement and adrenaline to rest now. They are on the moon and eager to step outside. Inside the cramped Eagle lander, Armstrong and Aldrin methodically don their bulky spacesuits and portable life support backpacks. Every movement is slow and deliberate in the confined space. It takes hours to carefully go through all the steps, changing into suit attachments, depressurizing the cabin, and configuring cameras and tools. Finally, at 0239 UTC on July 21st, they open the hatch of the lunar module. Armstrong, positioned closest to the door, is the first to exit. He squeezes himself awkwardly through the small triangular hatch, inching out backward. His large backpack nearly snags on the opening, but with some twisting he manages to get through. As he descends the ladder on Eagle's leg, Armstrong pulls a D-ring that deploys the modular equipment stowage assembly, a sort of shelf holding tools and the TV camera, unfolding it to broadcast what is about to happen. A television camera now peers out from the lander, sending ghostly black and white images back to Earth. Hundreds of millions watch with held breath. Armstrong pauses on the ladder's third rung from the bottom. Below him is a footpad resting in fine, powdery dust. It's the final step between him and the lunar surface. He places his boot on the pad, then jumps gently down to the ground. At 2:56:15 UTC on July 21st, 1969, Neil Armstrong becomes the first human being to stand on the moon. His left boot presses into the lunar soil, making an imprint that will likely last for eons. The surface is firm beneath a thin layer of powdery dust. That's one small step for man, Armstrong radios. One giant leap for mankind. These poetic words, slightly garbled by transmission, echo across the earth. On the moon, in the stark silence, Armstrong's voice is matter-of-fact. He describes what he sees. The soil is fine-grained and almost like powder. The landscape around him is monochromatic and strange. A bright sun shines in a pitch-black sky. Armstrong notes the stark beauty of the moon, later commenting that it reminded him of the high desert of the United States, magnificent in its barrenness. As he moves carefully, he finds walking is easier than anticipated. The 1/6 gravity feels freeing. It's absolutely no trouble to walk around, he reports, finding that he can bounce lightly across the ground. A few minutes later, Buzz Aldrin joins Armstrong on the lunar surface. Climbing down Eagle's ladder, Aldrin hops off the last rung onto the moon. "Beautiful view," he exclaims as he takes in the scene. "Isn't that something?" Armstrong replies in agreement. Aldrin then sums up the spectacle with a simple, poignant phrase: "Magnificent desolation." In those two words, Aldrin captures the eerie duality of the moon. Breathtakingly beautiful, yet utterly lifeless. All around them are grey dust, craters, and boulders under a brilliant sun, but no air, no sound, no sign of anything living. The horizon appears oddly close due to the moon's curvature, and the lack of atmosphere makes distances deceptive. The sky overhead is a pure black, and although it is lunar morning at their landing site, not a single star is visible. The bright sunlit ground has flooded the view and ruined their night vision. One object, however, shines in the sky, the Earth. A blue-white marble hangs above the horizon, the only other object in this dark firmament. The two astronauts pause and gaze at their home planet, feeling both the immense distance and an intimate connection. For that tiny, glowing sphere is where every human that has ever lived resides. All of history contained on that pale blue dot. Now the two men begin their carefully scripted tasks on the moon's surface. One of Armstrong's first jobs is to collect a contingency sample, a scoop of lunar dirt, and stow it in his pocket, just in case any emergency forces them to leave quickly. He uses a small sample bag on a stick to gather some dust and rocks, tucking it away as insurance that they bring at least something back to Earth. Next, they set up the TV camera they deployed, positioning it on a tripod to capture their activities for viewers back home. The black and white video is grainy, but people around the world can make out two ghost-like figures bouncing around the lunar module. The astronauts then begin to deploy scientific instruments they brought. Working methodically, Armstrong and Aldrin plant a solar wind composition experiment, essentially a foil sheet to trap particles from the sun. They also set up a passive seismic experiment package, a small seismometer to detect moonquakes, carefully placing it on the ground a short distance away. Another device, a laser retroreflector, is deployed next, an array of mirrors that scientists on Earth can shoot lasers at to precisely measure the Earth-Moon distance. These experiments are simple by modern standards, but they inaugurate humanity's first science station on another celestial body. One of the most memorable moments comes when the astronauts plant the flag of the United States on the moon. They have brought a 3 by 5 foot nylon American flag packed in a telescoping staff. Finding a suitable spot in view of the TV camera, Armstrong and Aldrin struggle a bit to drive the flag's pole into the hard lunar ground. It goes in only a few inches. They improvise by gently bending the pole to give the illusion of a waving flag, since of course there is no breeze on the moon. Standing beside the stars and stripes, the two take a moment for photographs. Aldrin salutes the flag crisply, while Armstrong snaps a now iconic photo of his crewmate in the shiny visor helmet with the reflection of eagle and the flag. The footprints of their boots are clearly visible in the foreground, starkly defined in the fine dust. These impressions, the first human footprints on the moon, are likely to remain for millions of years, untouched by wind or rain. During their moonwalk, President Richard Nixon places a special telephone radio call from the White House to congratulate the astronauts. His voice comes through the headset. "This certainly has to be the most historic phone call ever made from the White House," he says. Speaking for people everywhere, Nixon tells Armstrong and Aldrin that because of what they have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And that for one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. Armstrong replies on behalf of the crew, thanking the president and noting that they are proud to represent not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations on this voyage. The call is brief but profound, a symbolic linkage of the distant moon, the power centers on Earth, and the hundreds of millions of ordinary people listening in unison. In that moment, humanity indeed feels united by this achievement. Armstrong and Aldrin continue their exploration. They read aloud the plaque mounted on Eagle's landing leg, which they had earlier unveiled. Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. "We came in peace for all mankind." The inscription, signed by the astronauts and President Nixon, will remain on the moon long after they depart, a message to future visitors about the spirit of their journey. Next, Armstrong ventures out a bit farther from the lander, moving carefully to avoid overexertion. He walks about 60 meters to the rim of a shallow crater, later called Little West Crater, snapping panoramic photographs of the lunar terrain. Meanwhile, Aldrin uses tools like scoops and tongs to collect rock samples. He hammers 2 core sample tubes into the ground, though they only penetrate about 15 centimeters before hitting resistance. The astronauts discover the work is more strenuous than expected. Moving and digging in the suit is clumsy, and time is running by quickly. They prioritize the sample collection, gathering an impressive variety of rocks and soil. In total, they will bring back 21.55 kilograms of lunar material, several dozen rocks of different sizes, and a big bag of grey dust. Among these samples, scientists on Earth would later discover 3 new minerals, including one named armalcolite, after Armstrong Aldrin Collins, though such details lie in the future. Every so often, Aldrin and Armstrong pause to simply experience their surroundings. They notice peculiar details, how the lunar dust, when kicked, doesn't form a cloud, but instead sprays out in a perfect little arc due to the lack of air. They realize the extreme contrast of light and shadow. In sunlight, their white suits are hot, but step into a shadow and things feel cooler, though thanks to their suit insulation, their bodies remain comfortable. The two men find they can move in a kind of slow-motion loping gait, or almost bouncing, to get around efficiently. At one point, Aldrin tries a 2-footed kangaroo hop for fun. Both astronauts are intensely aware of the historic nature of these moments. Yet, amidst the lifeless rocks and dust, they also find the moon strangely familiar in some way, as if all those years of gazing at it from Earth made it friendlier than expected. "It's different, but it's very pretty out here," Armstrong remarks, marveling at the moonscape around Tranquility Base. As their allotted time on the surface comes to an end, Armstrong and Aldrin complete a few final tasks. They leave behind several mementos and memorials. In the lunar dust, they place a small gold olive branch symbolizing peace, and a commemorative packet honoring fallen astronauts and cosmonauts, including a mission patch from Apollo 1 and medals for Soviet cosmonauts Yuri Gagarin and Vladimir Komarov. These items are left as quiet tributes to those who paved the way and paid the ultimate price in the quest for space. After approximately 2 hours, 31 minutes of exploration, the first moonwalk must conclude. The astronauts have accomplished most of their major objectives, despite working somewhat hurriedly at times. Mission Control even grants them a 15-minute extension beyond the planned EVA duration, as their oxygen and power reserves allow it and their vitals remain strong. But now, the priority is to get back inside safely. Armstrong and Aldrin make their way back to Eagle's Ladder. They have to be careful not to kick dust onto the delicate experiments they set up, and also not to trip on anything. The moon's soil, as they learned, can be slippery. Aldrin climbs up first, re-entering the lander cabin. Armstrong takes a final moment to glance around at Tranquility Base, this silent plane that now forever will bear the mark of human presence. The American flag stands a few meters away, the footprints of their adventure crisscrossing the ground around it. He ascends the ladder and jumps back into the hatch. At 0511 UTC, they seal Eagle's hatch, repressurizing the cabin. Inside, they can finally remove their helmets. The smell of lunar dust, often described as spent gunpowder, fills the cabin as it clings to their suits. They are exhausted, but exhilarated. Before they rest, Armstrong and Aldrin pass up to Columbia a container with film and rock samples via a pulley system, and they jettison unneeded equipment to lighten the ascent stage. Even their life support backpacks are tossed out onto the moon and .wikipedia.org. Among the last items thrown away is a small cloth bag containing a few symbolic items, including a silicon goodwill disc with messages from 73 countries and the names of US leaders. Meant to remain on the moon as tokens of humanity's goodwill. Settling down inside Eagle, the duo attempt to rest before the demanding task of liftoff and rendezvous. However, sleep proves elusive. The cabin is cramped and still buzzing with the sounds of pumps and fans. The adrenaline of the moonwalk is hard to simply turn off. Armstrong finds a spot lying on the engine cover. Aldrin lies on the floor. Both try to sleep in full spacesuits, minus helmets, in case of any emergency. Armstrong notices Earth's bright light beaming through a small window, the planet that was their home now, oddly a source of disturbance, shining like a nightlight into the cabinasa.gov. They eventually close their visors to block some light and dust. Aldrin manages a couple of hours of fitful rest. Armstrong drifts in and out without real sleep, nasa.gov. After about 7 hours, Houston's voice crackles through the radio. "Tranquility Base, Houston. Good morning." The wake-up call is hardly needed. Armstrong responds immediately. "Good morning, Houston." NASA.gov. It is time to prepare for departure. In the next orbit, Eagle's ascent engine will fire, carrying the 2 moonwalkers back up to join Collins in lunar orbit. Unbeknownst to the astronauts, during their sleep period, a bit of high drama played out elsewhere. The Soviet Union's unmanned Luna 15 probe, which had been orbiting the moon at the same time, made its own attempt to land and return samples. Just 2 hours before Armstrong and Aldrin were to lift off, Luna 15's mission came to an abrupt end. It crashed into the moon's surface, a victim of malfunction. The space race had quietly continued in parallel, but ultimately, Apollo 11's crew would be the ones to successfully bring lunar samples home. Now, with Eagle ready to go and all systems checked, Armstrong and Aldrin prepare to bid farewell to Tranquility Base, leaving behind a silent tableau of experiments, an American flag, footprints, and the memories of their historic moonwalk. On July 21st, after 21 hours and 36 minutes on the lunar surface, it is finally time for Eagle to leave. Armstrong and Aldrin have reactivated the lander's systems, double-checked the circuit breakers. Famously, Aldrin had accidentally broken one, but managed to push the switch using a felt-tip pen, a quick fix that prevented any issue with engine ignition. At 17:54 UTC, Eagle's ascent stage engine fires with a loud bang, jolting the cabin upward off the moon. The gold foil-wrapped descent stage is left behind on the lunar surface, acting as a launch pad. Through the window, Aldrin glimpses the flag they planted. In a flash of movement, the exhaust from liftoff blows the flag over, knocking it flat to the ground. "I saw the flag fall over," Aldrin reports, a bit wistfully. Future missions would plant their flags farther from the lander to avoid this fate. Eagle's ascent stage now hurtles upward to rejoin Columbia in orbit. For Michael Collins, who has been flying solo around the moon, this is a crucial time. He searches the black sky for a rising light that would be Eagle. If Armstrong and Aldrin failed to launch, Collins carried contingency plans to possibly rescue them, or in the worst case, to return to Earth alone. Relief washes over him when he hears their voices and spots the approaching craft on radar. "Eagle, Houston, you're looking good," comes the call from Mission Control, and indeed, all is well. Within a few hours, rendezvous and docking are achieved smoothly. At 21:24 UTC on July 21st, Eagle catches up with Columbia, and Collins maneuvers to dock the two vehicles. The delicate dance in lunar orbit ends as a reassuring clunk signals the docking latches engaged. "The Eagle has rejoined the Columbia," Collins announces with pride. Armstrong and Aldrin, their job on the surface done, now float back into the command module one at a time, carrying precious film and sample containers. The three crew members are reunited, exchanging broad grins and hearty handshakes in the weightlessness of Columbia's cabin. Collins later says that while he never felt lonely, he is nonetheless glad to have his companions back. The crew of three is whole again. The lunar module Eagle, now just an empty ascent stage, has done its duty. It is jettisoned, left to orbit the moon on its own. NASA controllers would track Eagle for a while. It either eventually crashed onto the moon or drifted in orbit for years. Its fate remains somewhat uncertain. For the Apollo 11 crew, all focus now turns to the journey home. With Apollo 11 back to a single spacecraft, the astronauts prepare for the trans-Earth injection burn. On July 22nd, after a final orbit around the moon, Columbia's service module engine fires one last time, propelling the ship out of lunar orbit and onto a trajectory back to Earth. As they depart, Armstrong remarks looking out the window that the moon is receding and the Earth is growing larger with each passing hour. In a very literal sense, they have turned homeward. A sense of fulfillment mixes with fatigue. The hard part, the landing, is over, and it succeeded beyond expectation. Now, their task is simply to bring themselves and their priceless cargo of lunar material safely back. During the coast back to Earth, the crew carries out housekeeping tasks and stows equipment. They also take the opportunity to rest, real rest this time, after the excitement of the lunar adventure. There is a lightness in their conversations. In one of the last evenings in space, on July 23rd, the trio makes a televised broadcast from the command module to Earth. All three astronauts share reflections on what the mission means. Michael Collins, who orbited alone while his crewmates walked on the moon, gives credit to the unsung heroes. "All you see is the three of us," he says, "but beneath the surface are thousands and thousands of others who have worked tirelessly to make Apollo 11 possible." Buzz Aldrin adds that their mission is far more than three men on a voyage to the moon, calling it a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown. Finally, Neil Armstrong speaks, attempting to put the achievement into perspective. He reminds viewers that the responsibility for this flight rests on history's giants of science, on the American people who willed it, on four administrations and Congress, and especially on the dedicated teams that built the spacecraft and the Saturn V rocket. To all those people, Armstrong says gratefully, we give a special thank you. He signs off with a warm goodbye. Good night from Apollo 11. As the broadcast ends, there is a sense that Apollo 11 has not just been a national accomplishment, but a human one, uniting the world in awe and wonder. During the return voyage, one picturesque sight is captured on film. The Apollo 11 lunar module ascent stage in orbit, with the moon's grey surface below and a half-illuminated Earth hanging in the black sky above. Michael Collins took this striking photograph just after Eagle rendezvoused with Columbia shortly before the jettison. It serves as a visual testament to the mission, a tiny spacecraft carrying two brave explorers rising from the moon to rejoin their comrade and head home to Earth. The image encapsulates both the fragility and the ingenuity of human spaceflight. A fragile silver vehicle against the immense backdrop of the moon and Earth. In a sense, Apollo 11's crew now have the perspective of cosmic travelers. They have seen our planet from afar and touched another world. As they speed back, they carry with them lunar rocks, data from experiments, and countless stories to share. Apollo 11 coasts through the void, gradually accelerating under Earth's gravity. Mid-course corrections are performed as needed to fine-tune their path. On the last full day in space, a minor technical scare arises. A bearing in the antenna at the Guam tracking station fails, potentially threatening communications for re-entry. Ingeniously, a 10-year-old son of an engineer at the station is able to reach into the equipment with his small hand and pack grease into the bearing, fixing it in time. The teamwork and quick thinking that defined Apollo 11 continues even in these small incidents. Aside from that, the trip home is largely calm. The astronauts find moments to look out the window at the approaching Earth. Now a vast sphere growing day by day, brilliant and beckoning. After more than 8 days in space, they prepare for the final dramatic episode, the fiery re-entry into Earth's atmosphere and a safe return to the oceans of Earth. On July 24th, 1969, Apollo 11 returns to Earth. The world once again is watching as the final phase unfolds. In the morning hours, the crew dons their pressure suits and straps in tightly to their seats within the command module Columbia. The service module, now spent, is jettisoned. It will burn up on entry. Columbia is oriented heat shield first, ready to plunge into the atmosphere. At about 400,000 feet above Earth, contact with the upper atmosphere brings a bright plasma glow around the capsule. Ionized air causes a short communications blackout. The spacecraft, enveloped in fire, decelerates rapidly from a cosmic speed of nearly 11 kilometers per second, 25,000 miles per hour. Inside, the astronauts feel gravity return. A crushing deceleration up to about 4 Gs presses them into their couches, a stark change after days of weightlessness. Columbia's heat shield withstands temperatures over 2,700 degrees Celsius as it ablates the intense heat. Soon, the radio link crackles back to life. Apollo 11 has survived re-entry, high above the Pacific Ocean at about 24,000 feet. Drogue parachutes deploy to stabilize the tumbling capsule. Then, at 10,000 feet, the three main parachutes unfurl, giant orange and white canopies blossoming in the sky, easing Columbia to a gentle descent. At 1650 UTC, 12:50 p.m. EDT on July 24th, Apollo 11 splashes down in the Pacific Ocean. The landing point is roughly 13 degrees north latitude, 169 degrees west longitude, about 812 nautical miles southwest of Hawaii. From the deck of the USS Hornet, the primary recovery ship, observers spot the three parachutes and then the drop of the capsule into the sea. Columbia hits the water nose down, then rights itself as inflatable flotation bags flip it right. Inside, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins feel the gentle rocking of waves, Earth's ocean welcoming them home. They have been in space for 8 days, 3 hours, 18 minutes in total. Soon, Navy divers are on the scene. They open the hatch and help the crew into rubber rafts. Normally, this would be a moment for hugs and celebrations, but due to precautions about potential lunar contaminants, procedures are in place to protect Earth. The divers hand the astronauts biological isolation garments, special containment suits, which the crew dons before exiting the spacecraft. The astronauts are also scrubbed down with an iodine solution, and the command module is wiped with disinfectant. While the risk of moon germs is exceedingly low, NASA is taking no chances. Wearing their new quarantine suits, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins are hoisted into a helicopter and flown to the deck of the Hornet. There, instead of a traditional hero's welcome on the spot, they walk directly into a mobile quarantine facility, a modified Airstream trailer that has been set up on the ship. Through the small window of this mobile quarantine facility, MQF, the three astronauts grin and wave at the recovery personnel outside. Moments later, they receive a special visitor. President Richard Nixon has flown out to personally welcome them home. In an almost surreal scene, Nixon stands outside the quarantine window, speaking to the smiling astronauts inside the trailer. As a result of what you've done, the world has never been closer together, Nixon tells them proudly. The crew's faces beam with accomplishment and relief. They are back on Earth, safely, and being greeted as heroes, albeit through a pane of glass. The astronauts will spend 21 days in quarantine as a precaution, first in this shipboard trailer, and later at NASA's Lunar Receiving Laboratory in Houston. Scientists will examine the lunar samples and monitor the crew for any signs of pathogens. None are found. The moon is declared barren of life, and such quarantine measures will be dropped after Apollo 14. But even in quarantine, the celebrations cannot be contained. On August 13th, 1969, after being given a clean bill of health, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins are honored with ticker tape parades in New York and Chicago, cheered by millions of grateful citizens. That evening, at a gala state dinner in Los Angeles, they receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. In the following months, the Apollo 11 crew tours the globe on a giant Leap goodwill tour, visiting 22 countries and witnessing firsthand how their achievement resonated with people of all nations. The moon landing has truly been embraced as a triumph for all humankind, fulfilling the promise of the plaque they left on the moon. As the world celebrates, the broader significance of Apollo 11 becomes clear. This successful mission effectively won the space race for the United States, achieving President John F. Kennedy's bold goal of a lunar landing within the 1960s. But more than a Cold War victory, it sparked a sense of unity and wonder around the globe. People were inspired by the sheer audacity of reaching the moon and the image of humans exploring beyond Earth. The legacy of Apollo 11 lives on in every subsequent leap in space exploration. The samples and data returned, have vastly expanded scientific understanding of the moon's origin and geology. The mission proved that humanity could travel to another celestial body and return safely, opening the door to future Apollo missions and, eventually, to an era when humans will venture even further. In the calm, slow-paced reflection of history, the moon landing of Apollo 11 stands as a testament to what humankind can achieve through curiosity, courage, and cooperation. From the first daring journey through the void, to the grey solitude of the Sea of Tranquility, to the jubilant homecoming on Earth, the mission unfolded like an epic documentary, each chapter filled with challenges and triumphs. The footprints left at Tranquility Base remain undisturbed, a reminder of that one small step and one giant leap. And as Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins returned home, they carried with them not just moon rocks, but a newfound appreciation of our shared home planet and the boundless possibilities when humanity reaches for the stars. The journey of Apollo 11, from launch to lunar landing to splashdown, will forever be an inspiring story of exploration, a calm retelling of how we, as a species, first journeyed beyond our cradle and set foot on another world in peace for all mankind.